Jason sat in his apartment on the research station, enjoying the quiet. The day had been slow, just like the others before it. His job was simple, monitoring data from various planets and keeping track of space activity. He enjoyed the peaceful life, but today, something felt different. The usual hum of the station was interrupted by a loud crash. It sounded like glass shattering. Jason jumped up from his chair, his heart racing. He quickly rushed toward the source of the noise. As he opened his door, he froze in surprise. A woman, no. Not a woman like any he had ever seen, lay in a pile of broken glass in front of his window. She had long, silver hair, but what caught Jason's attention the most was the strange markings on her skin. Her body was bare, and she was shivering violently, her skin pale with the cold. Jason quickly knelt beside her, his instincts taking over. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice gentle. The woman's eyes were wide with fear. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't speak. She was in shock, and her body seemed to be freezing from the inside out. Jason didn't think twice. He grabbed a blanket from his bed and wrapped it around her, trying to warm her up. "Hey, it's okay. You're safe now," he said, trying to comfort her, though he wasn't sure if she understood him. The woman didn't speak, but her eyes locked onto his with desperation. She reached out with shaking hands, grasping at the blanket as if it was her lifeline. Her touch was cold, colder than anything Jason had ever felt. "Where did you come from?" he asked, looking round the room. But there was no answer. There was no ship, no sign of how she had gotten here. She was just here. Jason glanced down at her again. She was beautiful, though in a way that was completely unfamiliar to him. Her features were delicate, her skin a strange shade of pale blue, and her eyes large and expressive seemed to hold so much emotion. Even though she couldn't speak, "Don't worry," he said softly, trying to reassure her. "We'll get you warm." For the next few minutes, Jason worked quickly, helping her onto the couch, keeping the blanket tightly around her. He rubbed her arms, trying to get some warmth into her. As he did, the woman's eyes closed, and her breathing became a little steadier, though her body was still cold. Jason sat beside her, unsure of what to do next. He hadn't seen anything like this before. The research station was far away from any known human colonies, and there was no record of any ships in the area. Who was she? What was she doing here? And why had she crashed into his room? The questions lingered in his mind, but all he could do was wait for her to wake up, to speak, to explain. After a few minutes, the woman's eyes fluttered open. She blinked slowly, as if she was trying to adjust to her surroundings. Her gaze met Jason's, and this time, she didn't look as frightened. There was something else in her eyes now, something softer. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. Jason was surprised. He hadn't expected her to speak. "You're welcome," he replied, giving her a gentle smile. "Do you need anything else?" The woman's lips trembled, and for a moment, Jason thought she might speak again. But then, her eyes filled with something else, desperation, pain, and she reached out, her hands still cold as they touched his arm. I need warmth," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Human warmth. Jason was taken aback. What did she mean by human warmth? He was about to ask, but the woman closed her eyes again, her body shuddering as she tried to draw more warmth from him. The silence in the room stretched on, but Jason didn't pull away. There was something about her that made him want to help, to protect her. He wasn't sure what had brought her here, but he knew one thing: she needed him. As he sat beside her, watching her slowly start to relax, he couldn't help but wonder who she was. What kind of being was she, and why was she so desperate for human warmth? But as the minutes ticked by, the questions faded into the background. All that mattered in that moment was that he was here for her, and she was safe for now. Jason didn't know how long the woman would stay, or what would happen next. But he knew one thing: his quiet life was about to change in a way he could never have imagined, and it all started with her crashing into his room, seeking warmth. Jason sat quietly next to the woman on his couch, still unsure of what to make of the strange situation. He couldn't stop thinking about what she had said: human warmth. The words kept echoing in his mind. She was an alien, and yet she seemed so fragile, so in need of something he took for granted. Something as simple as warmth. The woman, who had introduced herself as Naira, seemed to be resting more comfortably now. Her breathing had steadied, and her pale blue skin was no longer as cold to the touch. But she still didn't move much. Her eyes half closed as if she were trying to sleep. Jason sat beside her, keeping a careful eye on her, wondering if she needed anything else. He'd offered her water, but she hadn't taken it. Instead, she had only asked for warmth, and that was the one thing he knew how to provide. The thought made him feel strange responsible. Even after a long moment, Naira shifted slightly. Her eyes opening again, she looked at him, her large, expressive eyes full of confusion and gratitude. "Are you feeling better?" Jason asked softly, breaking the silence. She nodded slowly, still trembling slightly, but no longer as weak. Her voice was quiet when she spoke. "Yes, thank you. The warmth, it helps," she whispered, her gaze flickering down to her hands, which were still wrapped in the blanket Jason had given her. Jason was still processing everything she'd told him, but he knew he had to ask. "Where did you come from? What happened to your ship?" Naira hesitated, her eyes avoiding his for a moment. It was clear she wasn't ready to talk, but after a deep breath, she began. "I'm from the planet Xyler. I was part of a fleet," she began, her voice still trembling but growing steadier. "But my ship was attacked. There was a fight, and the others, they left me behind." Jason frowned. "The others left you behind? Why?" Her gaze flickered up to his, her face clouded with a mix of anger and regret. "Because I didn't want to fight. I refused to do what they asked of me." Jason wasn't sure what to say. He didn't know much about other alien species, but he had always thought of them as advanced and powerful. He didn't understand why Naira had been caught up in a fight she didn't want to be part of. "I'm sorry," he said, feeling an odd sense of sympathy for her. "I didn't know." She shook her head, looking away as if embarrassed. "You don't need to apologize. It was my choice to join them. But now, I'm nothing. They don't want me anymore." Jason's heart went out to her. He didn't fully understand, but he could see that Naira was hurting, and he wanted to help. "You're not nothing," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You're here now. You're safe, and I'll make sure you're okay." Her eyes met his again, and for a moment, there was a flicker of hope in them. "You mean it?" she asked, her voice soft, almost fragile. "Of course," Jason replied. "I don't know what's going on with you or where you came from, but I'm not going to leave you out there on your own." Naira swallowed, clearly moved by his words. She hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "Thank you. You're kind. But I need to ask something strange." Jason tilted his head, curious. "What is it?" Naira's eyes dropped to her hands again, and she wrapped the blanket around herself tighter. "You see, my people, we don't survive without warmth. But it's more than just heat." She paused, as if unsure how to explain. "We absorb the warmth from others. Human warmth. It's different. It's stronger. It makes me feel whole again. But I don't want to take too much from you." Jason blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "You mean, like you get energy from me?" She nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, but not in a harmful way. It's a need. It's the only way we can survive after being in space for too long." Her eyes met his again, vulnerable and searching. "But I don't want to take more than you can give." Jason was quiet. For a moment, his mind racing. He'd never heard of anything like this. It felt strange. But Naira seemed so fragile, so desperate, that he couldn't deny her request. "So, what do you need from me?" he asked, unsure of what she meant. Naira seemed relieved by his question. "Just your touch, your warmth, just for a little while. I promise I won't take too much. I just need to feel safe again." Jason took a deep breath. The situation was getting more complicated by the second, but he couldn't ignore her needs. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew one thing: he couldn't leave her in this state. "If it helps, then okay," he said, looking her in the eyes. "I'll help you. I'll give you the warmth you need. Nara's face softened, and she finally allowed herself to smile, the first genuine smile Jason had seen since her arrival. She reached out with trembling hands, and Jason took them gently, not knowing what exactly he was agreeing to, but willing to do anything to help. As he held her hands, he could feel the warmth between them begin to grow, and with it, a connection that was deeper than he could have ever imagined. The days after Naira's arrival passed quickly, but they felt longer to Jason. The station's quiet routine was gone, replaced by constant thoughts of the alien woman who had crashed into his life. Jason had always been content with his solitary existence, but now, everything was different. Naira's presence brought a strange energy to his apartment, an energy that Jason found both comforting and unsettling. Naira had grown stronger with each passing day. The warmth from Jason, the simple touch of his hands, seemed to heal her in ways she couldn't explain. She had told him her people needed warmth to survive, but the more Jason learned about her, the more he realized it was about more than just survival. It was about something deeper, something that connected them in ways he hadn't expected. The first time they spoke of it, Jason was sitting next to her on the couch, watching the stars move slowly outside the window. She had been quiet for a while, lost in thought, when she finally broke the silence. "You've been so kind to me," she said, her voice soft, almost shy. "I don't know how to thank you." Jason turned to her, surprised by the sudden shift in her tone. "You don't need to thank me," he said, unsure of what she meant. "I'm just helping." Naira nodded but looked down at her hands, which were still wrapped in the blanket he had given her. "But it's more than just warmth," she continued. "When I'm near you, I can feel something else, something deeper." She paused, her gaze turning inward, as if trying to find the right words. Jason was quiet for a moment, unsure how to respond. He had noticed it, to an odd sensation whenever they were close, a feeling that seemed to grow stronger the more they shared their warmth. But he didn't understand what it meant. He didn't know what to make of it. "I don't know what you mean," he admitted, "but I feel it, too." Naira's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Jason saw something in them that he hadn't seen before: vulnerability, a quiet longing. "It's not just about your body's heat," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's the way you make me feel safe, the way I feel when I'm near you. It's different from anything I've ever known." Jason felt his heart beat faster at her words. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected to feel such a strong connection to someone, especially not someone like Naira. She wasn't like him. She was an alien, a being from a distant world, and yet, in this moment, they shared something that felt real, something human. "I want to help you," Jason said, his voice steady despite the rush of emotions inside him. "I don't know what's happening between us, but I'll do whatever I can." Naira's expression softened, and she placed her hand gently over his. "You already have," she said, her voice full of warmth and gratitude. "You've given me more than just warmth. You've given me something I never thought I'd find." Jason looked down at her hand, still resting on his. He felt the warmth of her touch seep into his skin, and for the first time in a long while, he realized that he wasn't just helping her survive, he was helping her live. The connection between them was growing stronger, and Jason could no longer deny the pull he felt toward her. He had always prided himself on being a solitary person, someone who didn't need anyone else. But Naira had changed that. She had shown him a different side of himself, a side that needed connection, that needed warmth. Just as much as she did, days turned into weeks, and Jason and Naira's bond only deepened. Naira grew more and more comfortable in his presence, her once fearful eyes now filled with trust and affection. She spent her days learning about Earth and human culture, asking Jason endless questions about the planet he called home. In return, Jason found himself fascinated by her stories of her people, her planet, and her adventures in space. One evening, as they sat together watching the stars, Naira leaned her head against Jason's shoulder, her warm breath against his skin. He hadn't expected her to do it, but the simple gesture felt right, as if they had both found something they hadn't realized they were looking for. "Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you never found me?" Naira asked. Softly. Jason was quiet for a moment, thinking about it. I don't know, he said honestly. I've always lived alone. I never really needed anyone. But now it feels different. It feels like, I don't know, like something important happened. Something I didn't expect. Naira smiled, her eyes closing as she relaxed into him. I feel the same way. I never thought I'd find warmth like this. I never thought I'd find someone who makes me feel whole. Jason's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, with Naira's head resting against his shoulder and the warmth between them growing stronger, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if they would ever find a way for Naira to return to her home. But for the first time in a long time, Jason wasn't afraid of the unknown. With Naira by his side, he felt like he could face anything. And as they sat together, watching the stars, he realized that the warmth they shared wasn't just physical. It was something deeper, something that neither of them had expected, but both desperately needed. The quiet days on the station slowly blended together, and the routine Jason had once cherished now seemed different. He found himself looking forward to his time with Naira, the strange alien woman who had entered his life so suddenly. Though he had promised himself he'd never let anyone get too close, Naira had changed that. Every day, Jason helped her adjust to life on the research station. They talked for hours about Earth, about her home planet of Xylar, and about the vast differences between their cultures. Naira was eager to learn more about human customs, and Jason, in turn, found himself drawn to her stories of her world. She spoke of towering cities made of strange, glowing materials, of alien forests filled with vibrant plants, and of her family of families she had left behind to serve in the fleet. But despite the connection they had, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that Naira wasn't telling him everything. There were times when she seemed lost in thought, her eyes distant, as if remembering something painful. He had noticed it before but hadn't pressed her about it. Now, though, he couldn't ignore it any longer. He needed to understand her past, especially if they were to continue this strange journey together. One evening, as the station's lights dimmed, Jason sat across from Naira at his small kitchen table. She had been unusually quiet for the past few hours, her gaze fixed on the stars outside the window. Her hand rested lightly on the table, and Jason could sense she was struggling with something, as if she were about to share something important. Naira, Jason began softly, is there something you're not telling me? She turned her head to meet his gaze, her expression guarded. For a moment, the silence between them felt thick, like something unsaid hung in the air. Then, she slowly nodded. I've been trying to find the right words, she admitted. There's something about me, about my past, that I haven't told you. Jason leaned forward, his concern growing. You don't have to tell me if you're not ready, but I can't help if I don't know the whole story. If we're going to be whatever this is, I need to understand. Naira hesitated for a moment, her fingers tracing the edge of the table nervously. Finally, she sighed and spoke in a quiet, almost apologetic voice. I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always someone you could trust. Jason listened intently, not sure what she meant, but he didn't interrupt her. She had been open with him before, and he knew she needed time to explain what was weighing on her mind. I was part of an army, Naira continued. An army that invaded other worlds. Xylar was a warlike planet, and I was raised to fight, to conquer. My people thought it was the only way to survive, to take what we needed from other species. Jason's heart sank. He had heard bits and pieces of this before, but hearing it from her directly felt different. He didn't know what to think. Naira, the gentle, kind woman who had melted his heart with her vulnerability, was once part of an invasion force. I didn't agree with it, Naira went on, her voice shaking now. I joined the fleet because I thought I had to. But as time went on, I started to see things differently. I realized that what we were doing wasn't right. I couldn't be part of that anymore. So, I tried to leave, but my people didn't allow it. They saw me as a traitor. That's why they left me behind when the attack on my ship happened. Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. She had been abandoned, cast out by the very people she had once considered family. The thought of it made him angry, but also sad for Naira. Did they want you to die? He asked, his voice soft. Naira's eyes filled with pain. I don't think they cared. To them, I was just a soldier, and soldiers don't have feelings. I've been running ever since, trying to escape that part of my life, but I can't seem to outrun it. Jason reached across the table, placing his hand on hers. You're not running anymore, Naira. You're here, and you don't have to go back to that life. I know it's hard to shake the past, but you don't have to face it alone. Naira looked at him, her eyes softening as she took in his words. I'm scared, Jason, she whispered. I'm scared of what my people will do when they find me. I'm scared that I'm not strong enough to change, that I'll always be tied to my past. Jason squeezed her hand, offering her the reassurance she needed. You're already changing, Naira. You left that life behind the moment you decided to fight for something else. And you have the strength to keep going. You've already proven that by being here. For a long time, they sat in silence, their hands intertwined. Naira had shared her deepest fear, and Jason understood her in a way he hadn't before. He didn't know what would happen next or what dangers still awaited them, but in this moment, he knew that she wasn't the same person she had been before. She had chosen to fight for a new life. She had chosen him, and for Jason, that was enough. The stars outside the window twinkled brightly, as if echoing the hope that had been born between them. Jason didn't know how long they would have together, but he knew that he would protect Naira, just as she had found a way to protect him with her warmth. Together, they had found something worth fighting for. The days following their conversation were heavy with unspoken thoughts. Jason couldn't stop thinking about what Naira had shared with him. She wasn't just a stranger who had crashed into his life. She was a woman torn between two worlds, struggling to leave a past that didn't want to let go of her. She had opened up to him in a way no one had ever done before, and it made him feel closer to her than ever. But there were still questions in his mind. Jason had always prided himself on being able to keep his distance, to maintain control. But Naira's presence, her warmth, her honesty, made it impossible to ignore the feelings building inside him. He felt connected to her, but he also felt conflicted. Jason sat at his desk late one night, staring at the data on his screen. The usual calm of the station now felt alien to him. There was a weight to the silence that he couldn't shake. He glanced over at the couch where Naira was resting. She had fallen asleep after their long conversation. Her face relaxed for the first time in what seemed like forever. He wanted to help her, to be there for her, but he also knew that the situation was complicated. She had been part of an invasion fleet. Her people had tried to conquer other species, and he didn't know how to feel about that. She had rejected that life, but could he truly forgive her for her past? Was he just a fool? Letting his emotions cloud his judgment, Jason ran a hand through his hair and sighed. He needed answers, but he wasn't sure where to find them. He turned back to look at Naira. She stirred slightly in her sleep, her face softening as if she were having a peaceful dream. He couldn't imagine the nightmares she must have faced in her life, the battles she had fought, the choices she had made, and yet here she was in his home, seeking safety, seeking warmth. Jason had spent most of his life alone, and in many ways, he was used to it. But now, for the first time, he questioned his decision to stay so distant from others. Naira had shown him that human connection wasn't something to be avoided, something to be feared. It was something to be embraced. But at the same time, he felt the weight of his responsibility growing heavier. He couldn't pretend that it would be easy. Her past was not something he could ignore. She had been a part of a fleet that had attacked his people, and no matter how much she had changed, the scars of that war were still there. Could he really trust her? Could he let her into his life fully without fear of betrayal? Jason's thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice. I can feel you thinking, Naira said quietly. Her eyes slowly opening, she looked up at him with a soft smile. You've been awake for a while now, haven't you? Jason met her gaze and nodded. Yeah, just trying to figure things out. Naira sat up slowly, her movement still a bit stiff, but much more confident than before. She pulled the blanket tight around her shoulders, her expression serious. What are you trying to figure out? He hesitated, unsure of how to put his feelings into words. I don't know. I'm trying to understand all of this. He motioned between them, trying to convey the mess of emotions he felt inside. You're not like anyone I've ever known, and I don't know how to process everything you've told me. It's hard for me to let go of the past. Naira's eyes softened, and she moved closer to him, her presence comforting. I know. I feel the same way. I didn't expect to find this. I didn't expect to find you. She reached out and gently placed her hand on his. I understand your hesitation. You've always been alone, and now there's me. But I promise you, Jason, I'm not the same person I was before. I never wanted to hurt anyone. Jason took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of her hand in his. It was hard to ignore the pull he felt toward her, the way his heart seemed to beat faster when they were close. He wanted to believe her, wanted to trust her, but the fear of being hurt still lingered. I know you've changed, Naira, he said quietly, but I'm still scared. I'm scared that I'm making a mistake by letting you in. I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want to hurt you either. Naira's face softened with understanding, and she gently squeezed his hand. I understand. I'm scared too. I'm scared that I don't deserve a second chance. But we don't have to figure everything out right now. We can take this one step at a time. Jason looked into her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. Maybe they didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe they didn't have to solve everything all at once. All that mattered was the moment they were sharing, the connection they had built, and the warmth they could offer each other. All right, Jason said softly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. One step at a time. Naira returned his smile, her eyes lighting up with relief. One step at a time. She echoed. They sat there in comfortable silence, their hands still intertwined, knowing that the path ahead would be difficult but not impossible. They had both faced struggles, and while their pasts were full of scars, the future was still unwritten. Together, they would write it. The days grew quieter, but Jason still felt the weight of the unspoken between him and Naira. They had shared a connection that neither of them could fully explain, but Jason still couldn't shake the fear that lingered. In his heart, he had trusted her with so much of his life, but her past, the life she had left behind, was a constant shadow. He was still unsure of how to move forward. Naira had changed, that much was clear, but her people, her planet, they were out there. He couldn't forget that. The human side of him kept wondering if she would go back to her old ways once things became difficult. The other part of him, the part that was slowly falling for her, wanted to believe in her completely. One morning, Jason woke up earlier than usual. The quiet of the station seemed louder than ever, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen. He decided to check the station's communication logs. It was something he did out of habit. Nothing ever happened out here, after all. But as he sifted through the data, he noticed something unusual, a signal, a familiar, coded transmission that seemed to have come from deep space. His heart skipped a beat. The signal was encrypted, but it was unmistakable. It was from Naira's fleet. Jason's breath caught in his throat. He had hoped that her past had been left behind, but it seemed her people hadn't forgotten about her. He felt a cold knot in his stomach. What if they were looking for her? What if they had come to bring her back, no matter the cost? He quickly walked over to where Naira was sitting in the living area, reading something he had shown her about human history. Her face lit up when she saw him, but the smile quickly faded when she saw the worry on his face. Jason, what's wrong? She asked, standing up. Jason hesitated, unsure of how to say it. I found something. It's a message. It's from your fleet. Naira froze. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. Jason watched her carefully, waiting for her response. But when she spoke, her voice was calm, almost a calm. They found me, Naira said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. I knew it was only a matter of time. Jason felt his heart sink. He had suspected it, but hearing her say it made everything feel real. He had known this moment would come, but he had hoped he'd be wrong. What does that mean? What do they want from you? Naira's eyes met his, and for the first time, he saw something different in them. It wasn't fear, but something darker, something more guarded. They want me back. They want to punish me for leaving, for betraying them. They don't see me as one of them anymore. They see me as a threat. Jason took a step closer to her, his voice full of concern. But you're not like them anymore, Naira. You've changed. You've shown me that. She shook her head slowly. It doesn't matter. To them, I'm still a soldier. I'm still part of their plans, and they will do anything to make sure I don't stop them. I thought I could escape. I thought I could leave that life behind, but they won't let me go that easily. Jason's mind raced. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that the woman in front of him was the same person who had shared so much with him, but the truth of it was hard to ignore. Naira's people were ruthless. She had been a part of their invasion fleet, and now they were coming for her. I won't let them take you, Jason said, his voice firm. We'll figure something out. We'll find a way to stop them. Naira gave him a sad smile. I wish it were that simple. Before Jason could respond, there was a sudden noise, a low hum that filled the station. It was followed by the sharp ping of an incoming message. The same encrypted signal from Naira's fleet. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Naira quickly moved to the console, her fingers moving rapidly over the controls. The message blinked on the screen. It was clear now. The message was a direct order. They knew exactly where she was. They're coming, Naira whispered, and they won't stop until they have me. Jason's mind raced. They had no time to lose. He knew that if they didn't act fast, Naira would be taken back to her people, and he couldn't let that happen. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. We can't wait for them to come to us, Jason said, his voice filled with urgency. We need to leave now. We need to go somewhere safe. Naira looked at him, her face filled with a mix of fear and uncertainty. Where do we go? My people will follow me, no matter where I run. Jason grabbed her hand, his grip firm. We'll figure it out together. As they made their way to the small shuttle bay, Jason's mind was filled with 100 thoughts. What if they couldn't escape? What if they were too late? He had no answers, only the determination to protect Naira, the woman who had shown him what it meant to trust, to care, and to love. But deep down, he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't going to let her go without a fight. The station had always been a place of calm for Jason. It had been his refuge, a place where he could hide from the chaos of the world and simply focus on his work. But now, as he and Naira hurried toward the shuttle bay, that calm was gone. The soft hum of the station's systems was drowned out by the rapid beats of his heart. Every step felt heavier, every moment more urgent. Naira, by his side, seemed just as lost in her thoughts as he was, though her face was filled with a quiet determination. They reached the shuttle bay in a matter of minutes. The sleek shuttle, small and unassuming, sat waiting for them. Jason quickly began preparing it for launch, his fingers moving automatically over the controls. But his mind was elsewhere. Naira had been a part of a powerful force, and now that same force was coming for her. He couldn't shake the image of them taking her away, of losing her forever. Jason glanced over at Naira, who was standing by the entrance, looking out at the stars. She hadn't said much since they received the message from her fleet. Jason could tell that she was scared, but there was something else there, too, something deeper. She had always been so strong, so full of warmth and life. Now, in the face of everything that had happened, she was still holding on to that strength, even if she didn't feel it herself. Naira, we have to move fast, Jason said, snapping her from her thoughts. Are you ready? She turned to him, and for a brief moment, her expression softened. I don't know what to expect, Jason. I don't know what's ahead of us. Jason took a deep breath, his gaze steady. I don't either, but I do know. This, whatever happens, we face it together. We have to stick together, no matter what. Naira nodded slowly, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. You're right. We'll do this together. The words felt like a promise, one that neither of them could take back. They had both faced their own battles, their own fears. But now, as the shuttle doors closed and the hum of the engines filled the space, they were facing something neither of them had expected: a future filled with uncertainty, but also with the possibility of something better, something worth fighting. For as the shuttle lifted off from the station, Jason's mind was still racing. He had no idea where they were going or how they would survive. But there was one thing he knew for sure. He couldn't let Naira go back to her people. No matter how powerful they were, no matter what they threatened to do, Jason wasn't going to let her face that alone. "We'll make it through this," Jason said, trying to reassure her, though he wasn't sure if he was reassuring himself more than her. "We'll find a way." Naira sat beside him, her hand resting on his. "I hope you're right." The shuttle sped through the dark, endless expanse of space, the stars twinkling like distant promises of hope. The sound of the engines was the only noise that filled the small cabin, but Jason didn't mind. In the silence, he could hear Naira's breathing, steady and calm. Despite everything that had happened, "Where do we go now?" Naira asked after a long pause. "We don't have much time before they catch up to us. We can't outrun them forever." Jason thought for a moment, staring out at the vastness of space. "We need to find a place to hide, somewhere they won't think to look." Naira nodded, her eyes narrowing as she considered their options. "I know of a few places, but they're not exactly safe." Jason turned to her, his brow furrowed in concern. "What do you mean?" "There are planets on the outer edges of the galaxy," Naira said, her voice quiet. "Places where my people don't go. But they're dangerous. The people there aren't friendly to outsiders." Jason's heart sank. "And you think we'll be safe there?" "I think it's our best chance," Naira replied. "They won't be looking for us in those places. And if we're lucky, we can find a way to make ourselves disappear. For good." Jason didn't like the sound of it, but he knew she was right. They couldn't stay in one place for long. Her people would be searching every corner of the galaxy for her. They couldn't afford to be found. "All right," Jason said, his voice steady. "We go there. We'll take our chances." Naira looked at him, her expression softening. "Thank you, Jason. I don't know what I'd do without you." Jason smiled, gently, squeezing her hand. "You don't have to worry about that. We'll get through this, together." They both fell into silence again, the sound of the shuttle's engines humming softly around them. The uncertainty of their situation weighed heavily on Jason's mind, but he didn't let it show. He had made a promise, and he intended to keep it. Whatever it took, he would protect Naira. He would stand by her, no matter what dangers lay ahead. As the shuttle traveled deeper into space, Jason glanced at Naira. She was looking out at the stars, her face thoughtful. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew that they had something stronger than any enemy, a bond that couldn't be broken. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, with Naira by his side, Jason knew that they could face whatever came their way. Together, they would find a way to survive. Together, they would write their own future.